step parents sounds so harsh sometimes, right? So it's not that the relationship is bad. It's not that they don't love each other. Pay attention. Be something different than what they already acting, right? And then you have to stop yourself. You have to challenge what it is that you have assigned, the meaning you have assigned to that belief. You got to slow it down. You are fighting a hard battle.
Hey there, I'm Lena Shine, and this is the Step Parenting Network. This podcast is focused on bringing to the surface much needed conversations around step parents and blended families. I really hope that with this podcast, you feel seen, heard, and part of our community. On today's episode, I brought along Erin. Erin is an emotional intelligence coach, attorney, and founder of EQ for Love, where she helps women build healthier, more connected relationships through self-awareness, emotional regulation, and effective communication. With a background in law and conflict resolution, Erin brings a practical, grounded approach to emotional intelligence, helping people understand not just what they feel, but why they feel it, and how those emotions shape their reactions, relationships, and nervous system. Erin is best known for her work on the emotional lens, the internal filter through which we interpret our experiences. Through coaching, workshops, and her emotional lens quiz, Erin helps people to recognize these patterns and respond with clarity instead of reactivity. Erin, welcome to the Step Parenting Network. How are you?
I am good. It's almost Friday. I have quite a few things planned for this weekend. I need to finish up some things for my upcoming workshop. But other than that, I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well. The weather is nice. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a story today that most of the time as step parenting community, we get a lot of people reaching out with stories, unique stories about their experiences, things that they wouldn't share with anyone else. And it can be hard, but I'm glad that a community like this exists for people to learn. And I thought it would be good for this episode to share one story so we can talk about and probably help a listener or a couple of people who might have that experience. So this story came through our TikTok community. It's from a stepmom.
Okay.
And she says, I'm a stepmom to 3 kids. And before this life, I was a perfectionist. I like structure, routines, clear expectations. I believe that if you cared enough, you stepped in, corrected things, and helped kids become the best or better versions of themselves. And then I became a stepmom. In our home, I can't discipline my stepkids. Not really. I can't correct behavior the way I would instinctively want to. So a lot of the time, I am expected to be hands off, even when things feel chaotic, even when I see patterns that could be addressed, even when I know how much smoother things could be with a little structure. I understand that they're not my children. I respect that boundary. I don't want to replace anyone. I don't want to overstep. I just want to help. I want to support. But instead, I find myself sitting quietly, watching things go sideways, knowing I can't step in. What makes it harder is that my husband is very laid back. He doesn't really see a problem where I see a missed teachable moment, sees kids being kids. He feels unbothered. And sometimes that makes me feel even more alone. I'm starting to question myself. Am I too rigid? Am I expecting too much? Why does this bother me so deeply when it doesn't seem to bother him at all? A lot of information.
Okay. Yeah. By any chance, does this stepmom say how old the bonus children are?
She did not say.
So that is a lot to unpack there. The first thing that I would say is that you have to remember that everybody parents differently. And I think as a step parent, the way that you would parent may be different than the way that your husband and his co-parent would parent. And so I think one of the difficult things in this moment is to recognize that their parenting style trumps yours, especially when it comes to their children. I don't know if she has any other children with him. That part wasn't given. But I think that is the first thing that you would have to remember is that people parent differently. And in this situation, their parenting style would trump yours. I think that's where you have to start. The other thing I would remember is that you say that you just want to help and that you just want to offer support. But really, what you are doing is you want to implement things and run things the way that you want them done. Right. That's not necessarily help or support. Help or support would be to aid them in how they parent. Now, that's not to say that you can't have your own opinion, right? You can't make suggestions about, maybe more structure here or more structure there would be beneficial, to them. But depending on how long this relationship has been around, or, the way that the children were raised, I think the first thing would have to be to kind of support them where they are, even if you don't agree with it. Now, if it is something that is egregious, right? Let's say she didn't mention anything about like disrespect or anything, it may be just a preference thing. I think that's a difference. Now, if it's something that is egregious or you feel disrespected, or if it was something like that, then I think you have more of a right to speak up. But if it comes down to just preference, meaning I would prefer it to be this way, it's not necessarily detrimental to the children. I think in those moments you have to defer. You have to defer to their parenting style. And I think that's not to say that you cannot make suggestions. That's not to say that your way may be better. But I think that there are ways to go about that. Maybe not directing the kids directly, right? Maybe you start with going to your husband, or, in terms of the things that you feel like would be better with more structure or more organization. I think it's okay to say, hey, what do you think about this? Or can I offer a suggestion? What about, X, Y, and Z in terms of organization? Or what if we tried it this way? But you have to also understand that the dad or the mom, they have the final say.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with what you're saying. And even if it was just if it was just parenting biological parents,
Mm-hmm.
parenting your child, it's important to know that everyone has a different personality and
Mm-hmm.
potentially a different parenting style.
Mm-hmm.
And so your husband could be laid back and might be the one who wants to be front and center and be, like maybe an authoritarian in the parenting. You still have to respect your husband's parenting style, even if it's with your own biological children. So it's a hard one. I can see why she would struggle with it, because maybe she's coming from a place where she just wants to help and she sees a lot of potential in what she could offer. But at the end of the day, it's their children. So she has to kind of defer it to him, maybe give some advice on and ideas on how things can be done. But at the end of the day, she would have to defer it to the husband.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, she didn't really mention much about the mother and her
Mm-hmm.
role, whether she's actively parenting the children or not, or
Mm-hmm.
she's their lives. So that will also differ based on the mother's active role and the space that is given to her to be a stepmom, and how much she can step in. But I found it interesting here. She said that initially, before she became a step parent, and that's something that step parents mostly grieve. We mostly grieve the life that we used to have, which can be very hard. But she's saying that she liked structure, she liked routines, things were clear, and she thought that if you cared about something, you work on it. And she calls herself a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
Really curious to know what your thoughts are on that. What do you think about how she used to be and who she is still? Because you don't just change once
Right.
you're married or become a stepmom or even have children.
Yeah. So yeah, perfectionism, it comes from somewhere, right? I talk a lot about your emotional lens, and that may be her emotional lens. And so your emotional lens is the way that you perceive the world around you, right? It's what you perceive as love. It's what you perceive as safety. We adopt certain behaviors to keep us safe. And so when she says she just thought that you step in and you help and you correct, right? That is her idea as a perfectionist of what love is, or how you help, how you support your person or whomever it is. And so it is okay that she is that way, but you have to also recognize that everybody is not that way. right? Even with just take the children out of this for a moment, right? That may also be a difference between her and her husband, right? She says she's a perfectionist. Her husband is laid back. Not necessarily opposites, but that could also present differences in their personalities and how they approach things, right? And so I think you have to be mindful that, yes, that is you, but that may not be everybody around. I will use myself as an example, right? I also identify as a perfectionist. I'm working on it, but right, it is what it is. And a lesson that I had to learn, not necessarily in terms of children, it was more so about my friends. I was holding my friends to the standard that I created for myself, and that's not fair. Right. I created these standards for me. And of course, I want everybody around me to do well and, to be their best. But what my standard is and what I think the best thing is may not be what's best for everybody else. It may not work for anybody else. And so I had to learn that, okay, yes, I want to help people. Yes, I want to be supportive, right? Because that's what I thought I was doing. I'm supporting you and pushing you to be the best version of yourself to meet the standard that I created. Who am I to come up with the standard? Who am I to create this standard and say, or expectation that everybody around me, or at least my close people, to meet a certain level, right? That's not really love and support. Love and support is meeting people where they are. Love and support is understanding the person in front of you, whether it be a partner, a friend, children, bonus children, stepchildren, is understanding where they are and supporting them in their own growth. And it may or may not look the way that you want it to look. So if these children were raised a certain way, again, that's why I asked kind of how old they were, because if they were raised this way and they are teenagers, right, you might do more damage than good trying to come in and change everything that they know.
Yeah. And it's also very critical, like the ages you're saying. As a teenager, you're pretty set in your ways a little bit and how you do things and how you were trained. But you're also learning how to identify yourself, how to find yourself, who you are. And that can create a shift in identity conflicts where you're not sure of what to do, where they fit, and how to behave. And like you're saying, that could be very detrimental. But you said something. You said that our emotional lens is how we perceive the world. So I'm really curious to know, do our experiences, maybe in childhood or growing up in our formative years, or even as adults, do our experiences change how we see things or our emotional lens?
Absolutely. So your emotional lens comes from your past experiences, how you were raised, the previous relationships, right? And so your emotional lens is there to protect you, right? We all adopt certain behaviors to protect ourselves from something. So let's just use perfectionist as an example, since that's that's what she mentioned. So sometimes what happens is you are a perfectionist because somewhere in your past, you learned or you taught yourself that if I am a perfectionist, if I do things right, that's what's going to keep me safe, right? I am protecting myself from rejection. I am protecting myself from being criticized. Whatever it is, everybody's is going to be different. For me, right, if I'll be transparent, and I've made videos about this, my perfectionist is not about necessarily a standard that I created for myself, right? Growing up, I did not get a lot of attention from boys. And so I told myself that if I am perfect, right, if I'm easygoing, if I'm always dressed, if my hair is done, then maybe I can protect myself from being rejected and I'll be chosen, right? And so that perfectionist, sometimes it comes from our parents. And we feel like we have to be perfect to get our parents' love, right? So it's going to be different. I can't say like all perfect people have the same upbringing or same experiences, but there is something in your past. There was some type of experience that taught you that being good wasn't enough. You had to strive for perfection, and that protected you from, maybe sometimes it protected you from abuse. Sometimes it protected you from being neglected. Sometimes it protected you from being ignored, right? There is something there, right? And so, yes, everybody has an emotional lens in which we evaluate love, safety, conflict, communication. To use another, let's use hyper independent. I think that's another common emotional lens, right? If you are hyper independent, meaning you do not ask for help, right? You rarely let people show up for you. It is likely because you've been let down before. Somewhere along the line, you relied on somebody or you depended on somebody. You were hoping that somebody would do something for you and they didn't. And so to avoid being let down again, you decided that, oh, I'm going to be hyper independent. I'm not going to ask anybody for anything. I'm not going to rely on anything. Right. So now I'm hyper independent. So all of us have an emotional lens, and it all comes from past experiences, and it all comes from trying to protect ourselves from something. Now that something is going to be different for everybody.
So meaning that how this stepmom who wrote to us, how she handles the situation could eventually help shape or help destroy or affect the emotional net lens of her three stepchildren.
Yes, so it could, right, depending on how much of this is implemented, right? But I would start with her, right? Why is being so perfect so important, right? Yes, she might have found the benefit, or she may have benefited from the organization and the structure. But I would ask, if she was in front of me, why is that the only way to get that goal, whatever the goal is, right? So whatever she feels like the benefit of being more structured and more organized is, right? That's what I would start with. Like, what are they going to get out of being more organized and more structured, right? That's the first, like, I need to identify the tangible, right? And then the question is that the only way to get that, right? Yes, that may have been the way that you learned that benefit. That may have been the way that, your parents instilled it inside of you, but everybody is different. Every child is different. You can even grow up in the same household and need different types of parenting, right? So I would so she said, she's starting to question herself. I would take some time, not necessarily to question yourself, but to self-reflect and figure out where this perfectionism comes from. And is that something that you need to pass on? Now, if it is strictly about, okay, I think they should clean their room weekly, or it's about more just about life skills, that's a little bit different, right? If they, life skills are life skills, everybody needs to know those things. But from the way that it's written, it doesn't sound like it's just life skills, and it sounds like it's more of like a preference thing. And so to the extent she sits down and realizes that, yeah, this is me projecting my upbringing or my standards or my thoughts, onto the children or onto how this family parents, right? I would encourage her to take a step back and think about that, right? And the other thing I would encourage her to think about is her ideas of help and support, right? Stepping in to correct may not be as helpful as you think, especially depending on how old the children are, right? Stepping in and correct, it may be that their help and support that they need is a listening ear, right? Maybe it's not changing what they already have going on. Maybe it's identifying a hole and making a suggestion to your husband, like, hey, I noticed this gap here. I think this might help in this area for the children, right? But I think she definitely has to think about what she believes her role is in this situation, and how she is defining help and support, and how much she is projecting, and other ways to be influential, right? I know we all want to be helpful, and she said, I don't want to replace their mother, which I don't think that is the case. I think she is trying to find her place in this, and we all want to be needed, right? We all want to be included. We don't want to be, step parents sound so harsh sometimes, right? But the truth is, you aren't their mom, but that can still hurt. So I get wanting to be involved and making sure that you are ingratiated and you making an influence. But I would just take a step back, and instead of coming with your own ideas about what they need, pay attention a little bit more. Right? Again, I don't know how old the children are. If they're very young, they may not need as much, but let's say they're teenagers, right? Pay attention. Be something different than what they already have. Right? If both their parents are laid back, or what, like you said, she didn't tell us much about the bio mom, but take a step back and just pay attention. Right? What do they really need, instead of trying to change what they have going on, especially if the husband doesn't see anything wrong with what they have, right? You are fighting a hard battle. Yeah. You're fighting a hard battle. So you have to think about how you fit into this, and it may not look the way you thought it would.
That's very true. I love that you said that there needs to be a perspective shift in how she sees support. Because based on what she wrote here, she says that she wants to support, she wants to be there for him and be there for the children. She wants to help. And sometimes the way we see our help and
Mm-hmm.
our introduction to the situation might be different from what they need
Mm-hmm.
or even how they might see it.
Yep.
She might think she's helping, but they might think she's intruding. And at the end
Absolutely.
of the day, how she wants to help is not necessarily what's important, it's the help.
Mm-hmm.
And so she could also ask her husband, hey, I want to help. What do you need?
Exactly that. And I actually have that conversation pretty often, right? Even outside of the whole children and stepchild situation, very often I have conversations with wives and they will come and say, he said I was trying to emasculate him, or he said I'm treating him like a child and I was just trying to help. Right? It happens, right? Women as nurturers, we want to help. We want to be supportive. We think we know what will help and we just want to jump in and do it. But you also have to recognize that while you are trying to help and be helpful, it can be emasculating. It can make them feel like a child. And so what I recommend is exactly what you just said. Ask them, what do you need? How can I help you?
Yeah. And I think sometimes that will simplify things. It will make things clear. And then based on what they've said, even
Mm-hmm.
sometimes with children, you can ask them based on their ages, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
you can ask them what you need help with. They might be struggling with something, but they may not need your help or want it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I created 30 questions to ask your partner to help redefine your step parenting role.
Mm-hmm. That's
One
good.
wants it or is interested in it, you can go into our stand store. I'll put the link in the description below and you can take a look. But I thought these questions are so important because if you ask the right questions, you will get the right answers and it will
Mm-hmm.
maybe make your step parenting easier. You would know when to step in, when to step back, and then have some peace of mind. So
Mm-hmm.
what you said about the perspective, changing that perspective and putting on another emotional lens. What do you think about that? Are you able to put on a different emotional lens for a specific situation?
We typically have different emotional lenses. Like everybody has more than one. And so I don't think it is about putting on a different emotional lens. It is recognizing when yours is present and recognizing when you don't need it, right? If her being perfect, like again, we don't know much about her upbringing, but let's just say she is into perfectionism because of the way she was raised, right? Her parents said you have to do X, Y, and Z, and they set a standard for her, and so that she adopted that. Okay. Now it might have saved her from disappointing her parents, saved her from being criticized or whatever, and that makes sense, right? I don't want to be criticized. I don't want to be rejected, so I am going to be as perfect as I can. It's nothing wrong with that, but she would have to recognize that, okay, well, in this moment I am projecting that perfectionism on these children, but they may not have that same repercussion or consequences for not being perfect. Okay. So whereas she might have been in trouble for not getting straight A's, maybe her bonus children won't get in trouble if they come home with a B the way that she might have. All right. So you have to recognize that, you know, the lens, while it protected you, right now, it may start to hurt her connection with the children and with her husband. Right. And so it's not about necessarily putting on a different lens. It's about recognizing when that lens is no longer protecting you or you don't need that protection anymore.
Wow. Okay. So, you mentioned hyper independence as one of the lenses. What other lenses are there?
So I have identified, I think it's about 8 that I see most frequently. So they are abandonment, rejection, control, perfectionism, injustice, distrust, hyper independence, and conflict avoidant. Those are the ones that I see most often.
Wow. And one person can have one or more, several
Yeah,
of
you
these.
can have multiple ones. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when do you know how to readjust and adjust the lens and know
Mm-hmm.
that you even have the lens on, which might not be beneficial in that moment? A lot of self awareness has to be there, but how do you know when?
Yep. So we all have a lens, right? It's just about when is it showing up and being mindful of that. So I have created a free quiz that I can send you the link that will help you identify your dominant lens. Like I said, we have more than one, but there's one that shows up more frequently than the others, right? And so take the quiz. It'll help you kind of figure out where it comes from. Like if you submit your email address, there are emails that come that have journal prompts in the subsequent emails that'll kind of help you understand it better. But then in those moments, what it is about is recognizing that, okay, my lens is acting, right? And then you have to stop yourself. You got to slow it down. And what you have to do is you need to be able to challenge your thoughts, right? Because your emotional lens is also about the meaning you place on something, right? So this person that you were talking about, there's a meaning that she has attached to perfectionism and organization and structure, right? She has identified if you're organized, if you have structure, there is a benefit attached to that. That's what I said. That would be my first question to her. Whatever that benefit is, that's the meaning she is attaching to that perfectionism or that organization and that structure, right? And then what I said secondly was to question it. Is that the only way to get it? Like, you have to question whether or not the meaning you assign to that is really based on what's in front of you or based on your past. And so to the extent she says, right, this organization and structure she wants to implement is based on something from her past because that's what helped her and not necessarily what is proven that is going to help the children in front of her, right? You have to challenge what it is that you have assigned, the meaning you have assigned to that belief, right? Because a lot of times when it's your emotional lens that has taken over and reacted, you are applying things from your past. Okay. You know what I mean? And not what's directly in front of you. So you have to also recognize that and make sure that you are challenging those thoughts. And to the extent you realize that, oh no, my past is still controlling, I'm applying meanings from previous situations to this situation, right? Usually there is something in that moment that reminds you or resembles something in your past that you had to protect yourself from. And so if, again, she had to be perfect in her household growing up for whatever reason, she doesn't recognize that she is also kind of implementing that with these children. But they may not have the same consequences, right? If their dad is more laid back than her parents were, they don't have that same fear that she might have had growing up that will make her to, want to be perfect. Right. So you have to challenge these things and question them. So this is actually what I am working on in the workshop that I have coming up. So I have a workshop coming up January 25th and 27th. And this is exactly what we are going to be talking about. How do you recognize it? How do you slow it down? And how do you know when to, kind of disarm it? You no longer need this protection. When is it safe to ask for help? When is it safe to realize, okay, I don't have to control every moment? When is it safe to know that I don't have to be perfect? Right. And then where do we go from there?
Wow. So you mentioned the workshop. If people want to join, is it virtual and how can they join?
Yep. So my workshop is The Way You See Love. And we are talking about how those hard moments, they don't have to destroy your relationships, right? I've seen people walk away from relationships, not because of like one big moment. It's like little moments that add up. And those moments are usually hard moments because they are emotionally charged. And so it's not that the relationship is bad. It's not that they don't love each other. It's not that they don't care. They were never taught how to handle those emotionally charged moments. So the workshop, January 25th and 27th, we are specifically talking about, your emotional lens and the way that you react, right? Because you react out of emotions most of the time. That's like your initial reaction. But that can be hurting your relationship. So January 25th and 27th, it is a virtual workshop. It is 90 minutes. The replay will be available even if you can't make it in person. And I can also send you the link so people can register for that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put the link in the description below for anyone who's interested. I think that this is important, not just for step parents, for any adult who is having any type of relationships, because a lot of times, I can speak in the angle of step parents, but also outside of that, a lot of times many friendships and relationships are destroyed because we haven't done the inner work. And the inner work shows externally, and it might not even be, you might not see it as a projection of what you haven't done inside of you, but it would show up and it can affect how you see relationships. And I think also how others can see you. So that is critical. Wow, that's some good work right there. So from what you're saying, I can understand that emotional lens is not bad at all. It can actually be beneficial, but it can hinder you in certain areas.
Absolutely. So there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not crazy. Like, your emotional lens was created to protect you. Right? Nobody likes to be hurt. Nobody wants to be, in pain. And we adopt and adapt to make sure that we are protecting ourselves from the past repeating itself. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with you because you have this emotional lens. Everybody has one. It's just what's important is recognizing when it is no longer protecting you and when it is starting to hurt your connection, right? So if, let's say, you have a hyper independence lens, and so you have learned to handle things on your own, because you don't want to be let down. Now, if you come across somebody that is not trustworthy, then your lens does well, right? It protects you from being let down. However, if you now have a partner, a husband, a girlfriend, or whomever that does want to help you, they do want to show up, and they can be relied on, now you're hurting them because you're not allowing them to be the person and the partner that you say that you want and need. Right. So it's definitely nothing wrong with you. It's just about knowing when it is protecting you and now when it is hurting you.
Wow. Okay. So I think that momentarily self-check will be good, or some introspection or reflection on how things are going in your life in any specific area will be important for anyone to do, just to see if you're letting a specific lens affect how you do things.
Yeah. And I think the most simplest way that I can put it is when you are in those emotionally charged moments and you are thinking about the meaning you have assigned to the other person's behavior, their words, right? Because it filters everything you hear, say, and interpret. If you are able to pause and take a moment, and whatever conclusion you came up with, ask yourself, is this based on the person that's in front of me? Or is this based on my own upbringing, my past, is my past influencing and dictating my current relationship? Because to the extent the person in front of you gave you no reason to believe that you cannot depend on them or you cannot trust them, then you know that you are operating out of your emotional lens. You are in protection mode, and it's based off of past, which is not fair, right? They didn't cause this. They are genuinely trying to show up and love you and be there for you and, provide for you and be the partner that you say that you want them to be. But if you are going to continue to make this person in front of you suffer for things that people in your past did, it's not, life's not fair, but that's not fair to them. It also hinders the healthy relationship that you say that you want and that you could have.
Pausing before reacting, I think, is very important, because as a step parent, kids all over the world will try you, your kids, step parents, other people's kids. But as a step parent, you get to be tried and tested often, either by the circumstance, the child in question, loyalty binds, whatever the case may be. And I realized that if you don't pause before you react, you might say something or do something and be sorry for it later, but then it might be too late. So pausing before you react, I think, has been a game changer for me. I even made a video about it, I think sometime during Christmas, because I realized that a lot of people just tend to go, go, go. And I used to be one of them. And I'm actually still trying and working on myself and not just reacting, but just pausing before I say anything that might hurt the other person. So,
yeah. So that initial emotional reaction, right? You're acting out of emotion. Your brain is wired to give emotions an upper hand, right? Before your brain can think about it, before logic can kick in, you're always going to have an emotional reaction first. You're human. You cannot stop that. You cannot control your emotions. You cannot turn them off, right? It's not possible, right? And so what's important is that you give your emotions a safe space to be, right? Walking away, putting the phone down, stepping outside, so that you don't say things that you later regret, because you're not going to always be able to take it back. Right.
Sure.
And I think that is especially true when you are trying to build a relationship with your bonus children. Right. For some, unfortunately, you got a very short window to mess up, especially if they're older. Right. I might not really want you here at all, but I might give you a chance just, to appease my mom or my dad. And so some people, some step parents you are operating in a very short window. And so you may not get the opportunity to go back and apologize. And so it is very important that you are taking the time to pause, giving your emotions that space, whether you can call a girlfriend and vent in a safe space. You can go and journal, just go for a walk, get it out somewhere, but do not talk to that person. I tell couples this too. Like, I think one of the worst things you could do as a couple is trying to resolve things right away, because you're not going to have a productive conversation. Your brain cannot be emotional and logical at the same time. Like, the human brain doesn't allow it. And so you have to give your emotions the space and the grace to do what they're going to do. And then once you have calmed down, now we can come back and we can have a productive conversation about what the actual issue is and, where do we go from here? Because the other thing is, when you are in that emotional state, right, you are reacting again to the meaning that you assign to it. It may not even be the situation, may not be the case, but you determine that it was this because of your past. And now you done said a whole bunch of stuff that you later recognize that, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That wasn't true. I made that up. I jumped to conclusions. But now what do? Right? You done hurt your credibility. You've hurt your relationship. You might have hurt your partner with the things that you have said. And everybody's not that forgiving. I know I'm not very forgiving. Like, I'm not you can't say anything to me and then I'm going to be your friend. Like, right? So everybody is different. Your husband or your partner may. And I still wouldn't take it for granted, right? Because they're still human. They still have emotions.
Yeah. Sometimes they can forgive you, but not forget.
Mm-hmm.
They might have their walls up trying to make sure that thing doesn't happen again, because they've seen you in a certain light that they can't turn off anymore.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So do you think, going back to this lady who wrote to us, she said, am I being too rigid? Am I expecting too much? What do you think?
Maybe. You might be. In terms of expectations, I would say that she is expecting too much, to the extent she is expecting that her husband and co-parent are just going to adopt whatever she says as what should be. Right. I think if that is her expectation, then yes, I think she is expecting too much. If she is expecting them to just say, okay, you think it should be this, automatically it's going to be that. If that's the expectation, I think that is highly unlikely. Again, that's not to say that she doesn't have good ideas. That's not to say that, what she wants to implement it may work. It very well may. But if the expectation is that they're just going to automatically listen to her, or that she should be able to just step in and implement whatever she wants, I think you're expecting too much.
That is interesting. So I'm curious to know, I've heard you say that people can have several emotional lenses, mm-hmm. and it can change based on the situation. But are you able to? I'm thinking of this in a way where we have our glasses and we can mm-hmm. clean out the glasses to be able to see clearer. Is that how you would explain being able to wipe the lens and then mm-hmm. be able to see a little bit clearer? So, in the way that you're not putting away your emotional lens per se, you're not changing who you are, but you're able to just see clearer what the situation is a little bit.
Yes. So the analogy that I like to use is, imagine that you take a shower. And, when you take a shower, the mirror fogs. Now, when you go to look in the mirror after you get out the shower, you can see your image, but you can't see yourself clearly. And so when you look through that fogged mirror, while yes, you can see yourself, you may not be able to see all of the details, but you can see the outline. You can see if you're moving your hand or whatever you're doing. Now, I think when you clean your emotional lens, it's about wiping that fog off of the mirror. You might still have the glasses on, but now you are more aware of what you can see. Now I recognize where this lens comes from. Now I recognize what I'm trying to protect myself from. Now I can see whether I need it right now or if I don't.
Mm-hmm. A lot of things to think about, and that is some deep stuff. I believe that it's important to have conversations like this because, and I don't think it's even talked about enough. Whereas sometimes you might be talking to a friend and they'll talk to you about maybe their relationship or a challenge they're having. And based on your emotional lens, you even project what you think should be. But another person might take the advice without taking into consideration the nuances that this person might be given the advice based on their emotional lens and not even from a place of objectivity. So mm-hmm. I think that these conversations are truly important. And I do hope that anyone who beliefs like I do believe, and I'll be joining the workshop as well because I want to learn more. I hope everyone who truly believes that this is important, or even have other questions regarding themselves, because we're
Mm-hmm.
always constantly in self discovery. You're not boring. You have a lot in you. There's so many layers to you, and maybe understanding who you are just a little bit better might make your perspective or even your challenges as a step parent or in any other sphere of your life. It could be
Mm-hmm.
work life balance, work relationship, relationship with your family members, nuclear, external, whatever the case may be. But it might be able to help you to be able to see clearer and be
Mm-hmm.
able to understand why you do the things you do and potentially why other people also do the things they do.
Absolutely. I think self awareness is the very most important thing. I think it also helps to kind of save us, right? We all have this idea of what we think life is going to be like, what we think relationships are going to be like, what we think our children are going to be like. But very rarely do we stop and consider ourselves. And I think that self reflection piece, and this is not to say that you are broken, that something is wrong with you, but just truly understanding who you are, the good, bad, ugly, and indifferent, right? Understanding what it is that you are afraid of, understand what it is that you are trying to protect yourself from, understand again when you need to protect yourself, when you don't, understanding what it is that you need. Right? I think being a step parent, it's a complicated space, right? I think we have an idea of right the type of parent we want to be. Right? We have our own parenting styles. Even if you don't have children, I think for the most part, we all have parenting styles. Like even if you have like nieces or nephews, or if you have poured into children to some degree, you have a parenting style. Right. And you got to recognize that everybody is different. It is going to be different. Even if you thought being a step parent was going to look a certain way, right? You have to recognize that everything may not be right. Earlier, you mentioned that we grieve a life that we thought that we were going to have. And so I think that also holds true even in a step parent. Like you might have thought that you were going to be able to come in and be friends or be an equal part of the parenting plan. And that may not be the case. You may thought that you were going to come in and be very hands off, but that may not be the case. And so we all have ideas of what it is going to be. But you also have to recognize that, there are a lot of other things at play here. And I think one of the most important things you can do is, like you said, one, be truly aware of who you are, right? Understanding your own boundaries, understanding the things that you need, understanding the things that you are afraid of, right? Understanding the things that you do and do not want, but then also staying flexible in all of this, and recognizing that you may not like things. And guess what? If you don't like it, you have a choice to make. There is nowhere to say that just because I don't like this, I got to stay, or I don't like this, that's it for me. You always have a choice, right? And if it's something that you cannot live with, right, what about you, right? You have to make yourself a priority as well. And so I think staying flexible in terms of your idea of things, your perception, or what you thought, what you think, and just being willing to, if you are really going to be supportive and even emotionally intelligent, it's about doing things that may not necessarily be what you want.
Oftentimes, I know women tend to fantasize even early on about the family life that they want and how they want the children to be. They want the white picket fence and the fairy tale story. And then you realize when you become a step parent that probably doesn't look exactly like your fantasies. And that can be a little bit hard to accept and even to change and adopt that fantasy life you have in your
Mm-hmm.
head. I think a lot of times people are always trying hard to achieve that story in their head because they
Mm-hmm.
believe that is the perfect life to live.
Mm-hmm. So I'm smiling because as I was sharing with you, right? I'm in the very beginning of a similar situation. And I thought it was going to be one way. And I have been learning that it's not. It's
Yeah.
not going to be what I thought at all. Okay. Like it's just not going to be what I thought. And either I'm okay with it or I'm not. right? And I get to make that decision. As of right now, it's still okay with me, even though it doesn't look the way that I wanted it to, or that I thought it would look, or that I would like it to look. As of right now, I'm okay with it, right? I am here to support. So I'm just going to ask, okay, so let me know when you do, when you do need my help, or how I can help, right? And we have had conversations, and I try not to overstep, but then there have been moments where I have finally spoken up and he liked my idea. Oh, you should have said something sooner. I don't know, right? I didn't want to overstep. I didn't, right? And so he told me, always make the suggestion. I'll let you know, yes or no, right? So that gave me more comfort in knowing that my voice is at least valued, or will at least be heard if I have, something to say. Now, I'm not going to say something about every little thing. I'm not going to, take it that far. But, right, there has been other moments where I wanted to make a suggestion, but I didn't, because I didn't want to overstep. But, him letting me know, it's okay. Like, tell me what you're thinking, and I'll let you know if I'm cool with it or not. All right. And I appreciate him saying that.
Sorry, say that one more time.
And I appreciate him letting me know that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're constantly learning each other. You're learning your partner all the time, and what his boundaries may look like, and what he probably would appreciate if you do. So I think that's also a constant journey of learning the person that you are with.
For sure. Yeah.
We're not going to let you go without learning just a little bit about the why. So I know you're an attorney. Why the passion for what you do? Why the passion for talking about the emotional list of human?
So when people ask me why I decided to go to law school, you would think I would have a better answer at this point. I actually just asked this yesterday. I did another conversation. I don't have like a emotional, sentimental story as to why I decided to go to law school. I've been a lawyer for 10 years at this point, almost. There is no sentimental story. I woke up one day in undergrad and decided, let's go to law school. That may be the way that I can influence my little corner of the world. So I went. Didn't necessarily love it. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I won't say it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't as fulfilling as I hoped it to be, at least not the job that I had, or the jobs that I've had. But what I have recognized later on, right, everything works together, because although it was not as fulfilling as I hoped that it would have been, the skills that I have learned have served me well. Right. So the same fact finding or problem solving, conflict resolution skills that I use as an attorney are the same ones that I use as my client. Right. When we are working through conflict, when I am teaching them how to handle those emotionally charged moments, yes, there is a piece of it that is, the emotional intelligence piece. But when it comes down to it, I teach them the same skills that I use as an attorney. Right. When it comes to the conflict resolution. And when I was deciding what type of coach I wanted to be, because I'm like, okay, being a lawyer is not why I was created. Like, that's not my purpose in life. I realized that coaching is my purpose. And when I was thinking about, well, what type of coach, because there's so many coaches out here, everybody's a coach. They often say that be the person that you needed. And so I started to think about the things that I have overcome and the challenges that I have faced, and, all of that. And emotional intelligence kept coming up. When I was in my coaching certification program, one of the reasons that first job was especially painful, I'm trying to choose my words carefully. That was especially, there was a supervisor there that caused a lot of anxiety, right? That relationship, I never felt like I was right. I felt incompetent. I felt like I was walking on eggshells. I started to apply the skills of emotional intelligence, and things got better. I understood him better. I learned how to navigate him a little bit more. I learned how to work with him. So no longer a problem. But then I realized that those same emotions that were coming up with him and that relationship were also coming up in my personal relationships, right? The walking on eggshells, feeling like, I can't do anything right, or feeling like I'm incompetent. And then I had to stop and self-reflect. And it wasn't about the supervisor. It wasn't about the job. It wasn't about this person or that person. It was about the meaning that I was attaching to it. That supervisor, he never told me that I was stupid. He never told me that I was incompetent. But I said that that's what he thought of me, because he wrote all over my papers and he gave me a whole bunch of edits. When I really started applying and applying the skills of emotional intelligence, and empathy is about step into the other person's shoes. Whereas I said he must think I'm incompetent because he rewrites everything that I do. When I step into his shoes, he rewrites everything he does that I do because he thought he was teaching me.
Okay.
He thought I was helping. That's how he mentors. He didn't know how to make any other changes because substantively my work was right. He couldn't do anything else but change these sentences that from happy to glad. Right. So it was I said I felt incompetent. I felt incompetent because he was writing all over the thing. He was writing all over the thing because he was trying to help. Right. So I realized it was the meaning that I placed. So I realized that I had to, right, again, my perfectionism. Why are you writing all over my stuff? It was perfect when I gave it to you.
Yeah.
Right. I cried every time he would leave my office because I'm not perfect anymore. I can't protect myself from his criticism. That's not even what that man was doing. And so I recognized that it was my past that I was bringing into these situations. I also remember at that time I was dating somebody new. I was getting to know him. And I thought I was being mature and communicating and say, hey, I don't open up easy because I've been hurt and da-da-da-da-da. And he looked me in my face. He said, I didn't hurt you. I shouldn't have to deal with that. But he was right. He was 100% right. Here I go. Once again, bringing my past, expecting him to pay for and account for things that he did not cause. And that's when I recognized that, okay, girl, it's you. You are the one that is assigning meaning to all these 3 different situations, that examples that I just gave you. It can't be everybody else, but at some point, you have to look in the mirror and recognize, like, okay, I'm a part of this. Again, it doesn't mean that your emotional lens is wrong, because there are other situations where it has served me well. Going to law school, trying to do the best that I graduated the top of my class, got a great job. It served me well in that moment. Right? So you have to recognize, again, when you are still allowing your past to dictate what you have going on. If you continue to allow your past to dictate, right, it's going to stunt your growth. It's going to hurt the connections that you can have with your person. He said, I shouldn't have to deal with that. Right? But me not opening up would have hurt us. Because I wouldn't have given the opportunity to get to know me. I wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Like, so it starts to hurt. And so my why is I don't want anybody else to have to go through that. Right? It truly makes me sad when I see people, especially women, settle in relationships. And I am all about recognizing the part that you play in this. Right? A lot of times people want to come to me and they want to talk about, well, my husband did that. But I want to talk about what you did. And that's not to say that your husband does not contribute to the current situation or the way that the relationship is. Probably does. But the reason that I want to focus on you is because, one, you cannot control anybody else. You cannot change anybody else. Hopefully you can grow, right? And your growth can inspire theirs, but there's nothing that you can do to make anybody else change or grow. They have to want to do that for themselves. And so long as I am able to work with you and help you self-reflect and figure out what your emotional lens is, why you react the way that you do, the way that you show up in this relationship, how is it hurting you from having the relationship and the marriage that you say that you want, right? If you can work on those things, most of the time, it also encourages the partner, the husband, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, whomever, to also want to change and grow. Right? Because if we're both used to having a screaming match over every little thing, if I learn that, okay, well, I don't have to scream. I'm going to step outside, like Erin said, and give my emotions a chance. And I'm going to come back and say, hey, babe, this is what happened. This is how I felt. Moving forward, can we do X, Y, and Z? He can't keep yelling. If you're talking calmly, if you learn how to regulate your emotions and you're talking calmly, he's not going to keep yelling. He's not. But even if he does, by the time that we have grown and you have worked on whatever, again, you get a choice. You get to say, hey, it's not working for me. Hey, this is working for me. Right? My thing is, I want people to be happy. I want people to be healthy. We all want and desire healthy relationships, and we deserve that. I also understand the benefits of having healthy relationships, right? My parents have been married for 51 years. And I feel like that solid foundation, it contributed a lot it accounts for a lot of my success.
That's beautiful, by the way. 51
years.
Thank
you. 51. Like, I just literally just moved back in with them a few months ago, like to, help them. But they They downstairs right now. And so I firsthand know the benefits of having a healthy, coming from a healthy family and a healthy, solid foundation. And even if it's not that you guys are still married, right? Just being able to co-parent in a healthy way, I think your child will still get the same benefits, right? And so, that is my why. I want people to be happy. I want people to be healthy and love, but also recognizing that happiness comes from you, not your partner. Right? Your partner can add to it, but your happiness is your responsibility. And a lot of times I see people settle, and it truly makes me sad. I've learned one thing that I was surprised about when I started doing this work. People know that they are in unhealthy relationships and they stay. I didn't know that people knew that, but a lot of people know. And so then my question is, why? Like, why are you still here? And I don't ask that to criticize or to pass judgment. I ask that question because you have to be honest with yourself, right? That's like my rule number one is always be honest with yourself. Like, don't lie. Even if you are going to tell me, this is unhealthy, but you still want to be there, that's okay. But I need you to be honest and recognize why you are still in this situation that you feel like is no longer serving you. And I have had women that are in abusive relationships come and talk to me, right? And I don't tell them to leave. I don't. And I remember one conversation very vividly, and she told me that she's in an abusive relationship, and I asked her, "Are you ready to go?" She said no. Okay. Oh. So that changes the right? She came and she was poured her heart out about the abuse. I let her finish. I let her get it out. "Are you ready to go?" She said no. Okay. Wow. Now the conversation becomes, why not? What's keeping you there? What's preventing you from leaving? And so we identified what she was afraid of. She's afraid of being able to provide for herself financially. She is afraid of, or she's tried to leave before. Cool. Finances was really like the biggest thing that she was afraid of. Okay, you're afraid of finances. Now, this is your homework. I need you to go and write down everything, every idea, every plan, everything that you could think of to provide for yourself financially. Because now once you are able to do that, you've identified your fears. I'm afraid to be alone. I'm afraid I can't provide for myself. But once you have a plan for it, now you are able to go and implement that plan. And she actually wrote me back months later, like, I left. And I've been going for a month. This is the longest I've been going because I came up with the plan like you told me to. Before I just left, but when I couldn't pay my own bills, I had to go back. But now because you left with the plan to address whatever your concern was, your fear was, now you have a better chance. I don't know if she's gone back since then. I pray not, but like, people have to learn their own lessons. And so you have to be honest with yourself. She would have never, and you were saying that people project and, from their own perspective, very few people can step out of their own situations and hear you. And so when people are projecting, if she would have just to listen to me and I said, leave, she would have been right back there, because she didn't identify that what was keeping her there was her inability to provide for herself financially, right? When I made you articulate it, now it's real. And again, that's not to say that she was ready to go immediately, because she told me she wasn't. But to the point when if you're ever going to get to the point of actually leaving a situation, and right now that's a different situation. It could have just been no abuse there at all, right? And people are still in a situation that, they don't feel like they are loved, that, they're not seen, they're tired of it, right? You have to identify and understand why you are there. Right. And I will say this, because this conversation came up before. I was talking to a wife, and she told me that she decided to stay for the children. And I have to caution about staying for the children. Because if you put it on the children, you will never leave. Because the list of reasons that she gave me for wanting to leave, they all had to do with the husband, nothing about the kids. So if the issue is with the husband, the solution cannot be the kids. Those are two different things. And when you put it, first of all, it's not fair to put it on the kids, but it also, you are avoiding accountability to put it on the kids, right? Your issues are with him. We don't communicate. Whatever you have identified, I don't feel seen. He doesn't listen to me. I feel ignored. You can't then say, yeah, we don't communicate, but I'm going to stay over here because of the kids. You're avoiding accountability. I would much rather you say, yes, we don't communicate well, but I'm still not ready to go.
But also, if I'm pretty sure she's not going to ask the kids, but sometimes kids will receive more benefits, or it's more beneficial for the child if you had exited the relationship, because they're watching the sponges of their environment. You're watching how the abuse is going on, and you're taking it all in, and you're teaching them that it's okay. It's okay to accept this kind of treatment from someone. It's okay to be treated this way, and you have to stay. And so the children might grow up and replicate what they've seen in the home. And so sometimes leaving is actually more beneficial for the child than staying in that situation.
Yeah. And even if, let's take abuse out of the situation, right? People still stay for children. And we see it on social media all the time. People say, I wish my parents, just left. I wish they figured out how to co-parent. Right? You also have to understand that you are your child's first example of love. And if you are staying for the children, in their brain, right, mom and dad equals love. But y'all don't even like each other. You walking around, y'all barely speak, y'all don't show affection, you're just there, you're coexisting. Now, what did you just teach your children about what love is and what love looks like?
Yeah.
That's not a healthy example. Right? That's not a healthy example. And so I just would much rather you be honest with yourself about not being ready to go than to blame the children, right? It's about accountability, the self-reflection. I would need this to stay. These are the things that are not working for me. And you may not be ready for a solution for that. And that is okay. I'm not telling anybody to leave, but just be honest with yourself, right? I know these things are messed up. I know my needs are unmet, but I'm not ready to go. And I'll take that, as opposed to blaming the children. That's you're avoiding accountability at that point.
Wow. Erin, we need you back. We need you back, because we need to have a whole lot of different things and help the community. This conversation has been beautiful. So I'm going to ask you a few rapid fire questions, just simple questions. Don't think about it too much. Whatever comes to you, just say it. What are you reading currently?
I am currently reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Wonderful. Is that your favorite book?
I'd say it's my favorite. I have quite a few audibles on my thing that it takes me a while to get through. So I started listening to audibles when I would commute to work, but then now that I'm in a house, right, there's no more commute. I don't know that I would say that it is my favorite, but it is pretty good.
Nice. And what is your most used emoji? Can you describe it?
My most used emoji? Maybe the heart hands.
The heart hands?
Yeah, the hands that make the heart.
Got it. That's cute. I like that.
Or the distress face. I feel like I'm in distress a lot. Maybe I had to change to the distress face. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what is your hidden talent? I can see you as a secret.
I was gonna say, I don't know if it's hidden, but I used to dance.
Oh, see, yeah. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. Like I have ballet slippers tattooed on my neck.
That's cute.
I don't know how hidden that is. Maybe it is. Maybe people don't know that about me. But yeah, I used to dance for a long time. Till I was 25.
All right. And if you had to eat one thing in every meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
French fries or pizza.
Okay. This one you can reflect on a little bit. What has been your biggest teacher in life?
My biggest teacher?
It could be a person, it could be a situation, it could be an instance, it could be a movie, a book.
I think if I can only pick one, before I went to law school, I was a paralegal for children and youth services. I specifically I was a paralegal for orphans court, so I was responsible for terminating parental rights. And I saw people that did not look like the client base making decisions and making judgments when they did not understand the people in front of them. And I would say that was life-changing for me. While I did not have the same upbringing as the people in front of me, it made me very inquisitive. Well, why is this their situation? Why do people, right? That was kind of my first example that people grow up differently, and it is unfair to have expectations of people based on where you're from, right? Because if I'm starting way back here, you're starting up here, it's no way we can have the same goal. And I think that job was very eye-opening. One, to see how people would judge and criticize and set standards for people that were not based on meeting people where they were. Um, it also showed that people were raised differently than me. I was very blessed, very privileged, come from a very probably sheltered upbringing. But instead of, I made a decision not to be judgmental like those other people. Instead, I wanted to understand more. And I think that has served me well, even especially like in the coaching space. I may not understand. Right. I may not know how this stepmom feels and that her feelings are hurt because, I don't know, the child didn't say goodnight. I may not get it. I'm not in that situation, but that does not mean that I cannot be empathetic. That does not mean that I cannot hold space for her. That does not mean that I can't support her wherever she is. And I think that has been the best skill that I could learn, to not be judgmental, to really take a look at the person that is in front of me, even if very much so if they're different than me, and really just try to understand, as opposed to projecting or filling in the gaps or coming up with my own conclusions about what happened and where. And right. And I love that about myself, that I'm going to support you wherever you are. I don't care if you are celebrating, you just bought a pair of jeans. Maybe it took you a long time to save up for that pair of jeans. Doesn't matter that I could have went and bought two pair of jeans. I'm going to celebrate you for the one. If it's an accomplishment to you, let's celebrate. So I would say that job was probably the biggest teaching moment, that everybody is different. People are doing the best that they can for the most part, and to lead with love and understanding as opposed to judgment and criticism.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation, Erin. Thank you so much for coming on. I learned a lot, and I'm hoping that the lady who wrote to us learned a lot too,
Mm-hmm.
and our listeners as well. So thank you for
Thank you for
us today.
Thank you for having me.